Oh, perfect. Thank you. This is that live hot mic situation. They can't see us, but they can't hear us. All right, everybody, we're getting the live stream up and running. We've got Jarita Davis that's going to be joining us, and I'm super excited to hear all the things she has to say today. All right, we're here live at Naukabout. What? Serafina and I were at a entrepreneurial book club where Stephanie never read the right book, and
Stephanie was terrible at this book club.
I really sucked at book club.
I did
Fabulous. What?
I just had a visual. I just had a visual.
Proud of it. Hello, everybody. Welcome into Funday here at Naukabout. My guest today, Jarita Davis. Thank you so much for answering the call.
Sure. Thank you for having me on your show.
Sarah Murphy, I said I put out on this live because you never know what you're going to get. Welcome to our Funday here at Naukabout. This week is Books and Bites. And we love having a local author. If you know somebody that is creating some amazing things, whether it's poetry, whether it's short stories, whether it's full-on books, whether it's sagas, we've got them coming to you. And I'm really excited to promote local authors because not everybody is published. Not everybody is in bookstores. And if you are looking for local authors at your local bookstore, please ask them where they are. They need to be put out there. So Jarita, maybe you can tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And all the fabulousness that you are.
Oh, you're very nice. My name is Jarita Davis. I live in Falmouth. I do have a book out in bookstores, so I am in fact published.
Yes.
I have a collection of poems called Return Flights, and it's published by Tagus Press. You can get that wherever books are sold. You can order it online through Amazon if you want, or directly from the publisher. And then recently, I've been included in a anthology of poetry by Black poets called This is the Honey, and Kwame Alexander is the editor for that collection. It's a beautiful collection, so I encourage everyone to run out and get it if they can. That was actually sold out on Amazon after the
That's
first
exciting.
4 days. Yeah. So Kwame Alexander has a lot of, he's kind of
our live studio audience
Yeah.
absolutely clap, hoot and holler.
live audience here. He's well known enough to go on like NPR to promote it, and he was on Stephen Colbert's television
Very
late
cool.
night show, and so it got a lot of publicity nationwide.
You and I were talking candidly before you had come here, because obviously we did have a conversation. It wasn't like, Jarita, show up. And she's like, all right. But you were saying how, like, we were talking about object in motion stays in motion, about how you've been kind of quiet on the scene for a while.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, here you are.
Right. So there's definitely some momentum that's been building. I have done a lot of poetry readings on the Cape previously, but it's been a couple of years since I've been out and about. And then now, there was a reading in Boston I did on February 1st, and then I think it was the 10th in Woods Hole, and now this. And so I keep getting calls. It's like people have remembered that I'm a writer. So.
Well, it's, you know what, you put yourself out there, which is so hard to do when you're in your kind of cocoon of writing. Maybe you can talk about the process a little bit for you.
So the process for me is trying. I would say the process for me is to just write a whole bunch of garbage and then go back later and read it and see if there's anything that's like, oh, this looks interesting, or maybe there's a
mining for nuggets of goodness.
I used to say like, oh, look for the gems, but sometimes they're not even gems. It's just like little glimmers, and you're like, that could be something. And so you go back and you find, and you. I would say cut out the rest, but really sometimes it's just finding these little like turns of phrases or ideas or something that sparks, and then you can work from there. So that's usually and then once you've got something to fix, you just keep revising it and revising it and revising it over and over again.
Maybe you can talk about your experience in your education. I know that you've got quite a pedigree.
Yes, that's true. I have a bachelor's in classics from Brown University, so I was a big Latin and ancient Greek nerd for many years, and then was actually kind of bound for grad school in the classics. And
It's such a good
maybe-
area of Providence, though. I grew up in Attleboro, so I just like that was our place.
Yeah, Providence
It's
has
got-
come a long
Yeah.
way from when I was there. When I first started, I was like, oh God. And now I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is a really great
It's a
place.
nice melting pot. It's like a small melting pot.
It has a real, I think, a very real artistic vibe there. And maybe it's, RISD students who have stuck around, or I don't know, there's something there that just feels really vibrant in
I love that their
creative
campuses
sense.
are like right there
Yeah.
with each other. So you get that experience of being in art school
Well, you can
while being
take-
in real academia.
You can take classes at either university. So
Which
I
is
had
incredible.
RISD students in like my Italian studies class, and then I took some photography classes at Rhode Island School of Design.
Very neat.
So it's a nice crossover right there.
Totally. Good morning, Cora. Denise, yes, we are at Naukabout here, and Jarita will be here for a little bit longer. If you want to come and meet her and talk to her about any of her writings, please do so. We'll be here for a bit. And Jarita's going to read us a short story.
Yes.
This has never been read aloud.
Yes. So this is completely fresh. I've workshopped it, but I've only had people sort of read it on their own and give me feedback. I haven't really heard it out loud in front of a live audience like this. Okay, so it's set in Brava, which is the smallest island on the Cape Verde Islands, and it's inspired by, maybe not based, it's inspired by a true story.
Well, you were there, right?
Yes. So while I was on the island of Brava, I saw a like a plaque, sort of a memorial, little almost monument. I mean, it's very small, but it was for the folks who had been on this ship called the Matilda. And so in like 1943, there was a ship that was going from Brava to the United States, and there's sort of like a little anecdote of what is known about what happened for the people on this ship. And so I took that and ran with it and tried to write the backstory a little. So I'm just going to jump right in.
Sure. I want our camera guy to help me with this so that I don't need to be watching you on camera. I want to give you the full camera.
Okay, no problem.
I know, right? Perfect. We're ready.
Okay, great. So the title is The Curse of the Matilda. There was a boy. He lived in a small house in a small village on the small island of Brava with his mother and grandmother. The boy's mother was going to have a baby. The boy's father had come home for Christmas, but he went back to America to work. This time, his father didn't say, "Be good," or "Listen to your mother," when he left. This time he said the boy was the man of the house when the father was away. His father told him to look out for his mother and grandmother, and he gave him a handshake, not a hug. That was 6 months ago, the day after his 12th birthday. There weren't many men left in the village. Old Veve was not his grandfather, but everyone in the village called him Veve because he was like a grandfather to all of them. There were some men visiting their families on the island, the way his father did a few months ago, but now they are all going back to America on the Matilda. The first day the Matilda docked at the harbor in Furno, the boy stood on a cliff nearby and watched from above. It didn't seem very big, and the men who walked by or got on the ship looked tiny. The ship was a perfect, white new thing next to the gray, rocky harbor. It looked like a child's toy boat. The next day, the boy finished his chores quickly so that he could go down to the dock. He fed a handful of grain to their 3 chickens pecking in the dust. It hadn't rained yet that summer, so he watered the dirt where he planted seeds last month. Last summer, it only rained once, but this year might be better. He went down to Furno to look at the Matilda, but there it was too big to see all at once while standing next to it, and up close the ship didn't gleam the way it had from the cliff. It was patched and scuffed, and the white paint was chipped. It was a ship made rough from hard times at sea. The men were busy hammering things and collecting things and carrying them on and off the ship. None of them talked to the boy, so he went home. The third day, he heard the older boys in the village talking about the Matilda. They were going to go to America too. They were going to make money the way their uncles and brothers and fathers made money, by leaving home. They said they were not going to stay on the island like women. The young boy asked if they all left, who would take care of the women? His mother and grandmother needed him, and he was the only man at home to protect them. The older boys laughed. Protect them from what, big man? They asked. Those skinny goats tied behind your house? But the boy's mother was pregnant, and if he wasn't there, then who would run for help if she needed it right away? His grandmother couldn't, and he could run faster than any other boy at school. When the boy went home, he started to tell his mother and grandmother about the ship at the dock, but they told him to go back inside so he wouldn't get in their way. Do you need me to get some salt, Grandma? He asked. Or should I go down to the spring and bring up more water for the house? No, no, she pinched his chin playfully. Just go outside. Your mother and I are talking, don't you see? His grandmother and mother turned from him and spoke very quietly and quickly. The boy went for a walk. He visited with Veve. Veve was mending a torn fishing net. The boy sat next to him and drew in the dirt with a stick. He drew a square, a circle, a triangle, and then a star. He drew them all on top of each other until the dirt looked like a patch of lines. Then the boy smoothed all of the lines over with the bottom of his foot. The boy said, I'm going to see my father. The net sat in Veve's lap, and he held a frayed end with one hand. I'm going on the Matilda, the boy said. When it reaches America, I'll find my father and work with him. We need to send more money to Mama for the new baby. Veve's brown hands were broad and dry. The left hand was missing 2 middle fingers. He used his right hand to unspool new twine. Boy, Veve said without looking up from his net, do not go. The boy stabbed the stick in the dirt and made dull circles in the dust. There is nothing here, the boy said. Not in the village, not on the whole island. The other boys are going. Why should I stay here? Veve put the spool down and looked at the boy. His eyes were milky and clouded, but he could see. We are here, Veve said. Your mother and grandmother are here, and soon you will be a big brother. Stay here with us. When the other boys go, then you will be the oldest on the island. All these younger ones will look to you, eh? That's something. The boy did not think that this was something. He threw his stick away, and it swung in an awkward circle, almost parallel to the ground. It fell into a dry shrub. You're still too young, Veve said. If all the boys go at once, there will be no one left to make the next trip. Go later, when you're stronger. Veve picked up the fishing net again and continued tying knots with his 8 deft fingers. The boy went back to the dock a day later and stopped one of the men who was working. When does the Matilda sail? He asked. In 2 days, the man said, when we finish the repairs and load all the cargo. Does your mother have a letter for us to bring to your father? The boy held his head higher, looked into the man's dark face and said, I can bring that myself. I'm going to join my father in America. The man laughed. Oh, no, no, he said. You are much too young to come with us. The captain would never allow it. The man rubbed the boy's soft, woolly head and said, go on now. You'll get hurt standing here. When he got home, his mother and grandmother were still talking about the baby. The boy was sure that this baby would be a girl too, and that soon he and Veve would be the only men left on the island. When the day came for the Matilda to sail, the boy went back down to Furno. It was noisy at the docks, and none of the men seemed to notice him. They shouted to each other and threw the rope down from the deck and carried enormous barrels of food for their journey. The women they were leaving behind were there too, the mothers and wives and daughters. They all said goodbye and cried. They hugged the men first and then each other. It was easy for the boy to sneak on board. He walked on the gangplank in a group of men, and no one seemed to even notice him. He hid in the hull of the ship with barrels of food and boxes of things to be brought to America. The ship rocked in its place at the dock, and the boy heard shouts from outside. He heard footsteps knock overhead and the heavy thunk of things dropped and thrown on deck. He would stay there as long as he could. He would not go on deck until the ship was too far out to sea for the men to turn back. He had some food saved from breakfast, an old letter with his father's address in America, and some extra clothes in a small satchel. He would use the satchel for a pillow when he slept. Now the boat was moving. The footsteps overhead were more deliberate and regular. His mother and grandmother would not look for him until dinner time. And when he finally came out on deck, the men would be so surprised that he had fooled them. They would see how smart he was, and he would show them how much he could help once they were out at sea. He would help man the sails if they wanted, and they would be happy that he had come along. The boy would find his father at the address on the envelope and be happy to see him in America. He would tell the boy all about his time there, and the boy could tell him how he had taken good care of Mama and Grandma. The father would find the boy work, and they would send a letter back to Brava that explained everything and had twice as much money. The boy crouched in the hull for a long time and was sure no one would come down and see him. Then he got bored, and his legs hurt from sitting in the same position for so long. He moved from behind the potato sacks and stood up between the huge barrels. His feet were cold on the floor of the ship. After a moment, he realized they were cold and wet. He looked at the floorboards and the bottom of the barrels and saw they were wet too. The boy looked at each barrel to see which one was leaking. Then he saw the problem. The water was coming from the side of the boat. He felt a spot where the wood was damp and water was soaking through. He took a shirt from his bag to mop up some of the water, but that didn't work. There was more and more water, and soon the shirt was completely soaked. Then even more water pooled around the shirt. He looked for a hole or something he could plug up to stop the leak, but he couldn't see where the water came from. He didn't know how to stop it. He couldn't fix the leak. An adult would know how to fix the leak, but he was not an adult. He was not an adult, and the boy realized he should not be on that ship. The boy looked for a new place to hide, far from the opposite side of the leak. There were some barrels and cargo, but nothing was as good as a hiding place he had before. The men were going to find him, and he was going to be in a lot of trouble. He had to get away before anyone found him. The boy quickly crept up to the deck and saw a man yelling at one of the older boys who had teased him in the village. The older boy had broken something, and the man was very angry. The boy looked for someone else to tell about the leak, but everyone was watching the angry man. The boy looked back at the island and could still see the land at a distance. It was so far away that he couldn't see if anyone was still there waving. He looked behind him to make sure no one on the boat was watching, and then climbed over the side of the deck. He slipped into the water, hoping not to make too much noise. His body plunged beneath the surface, and then there was no sound at all. He was stunned by the cold. The water stopped the boy in an icy hold. The boy pushed himself back up to the surface as fast as he could, and he gasped for air. He opened his mouth to breathe too soon and came up sputtering and choking on salt water. He panicked for a moment, and even with his head above the water, he still couldn't breathe. He coughed and turned around in the water. The salt water burned his eyes, and he couldn't see which way there was land. Then he could see the boat and swam away from it as hard as he could. He swam for a long time. He could see the shore now, but it didn't seem like he was getting closer. He swam hard, but it felt like the ocean was pushing back against him, back further and further from the land. When his legs and arms were too tired to swim, he'd tread water for a few moments, breathe as much as he could, and then swam again, but not as fast. He wasn't as good of a swimmer as he was a runner. There was another boy in his village who was a better swimmer, but that boy wasn't here now, and he wasn't racing against him. He tried to get a little closer to shore with each kick of his leg and reach of his arm. He pushed hard with each stroke. He thought about how easily the wood gave beneath his fingers. Thought about how easily I completely lost my spot. Oh no! He thought about how easily the wood gave beneath his fingers at the damp spot where the water leaked into the boat, and he swam harder. He wished he had never snuck aboard the Matilda. He wished he was at Veve's house, listening to the old man's stories about when he was a young boy. The land still didn't look much closer, but the ship behind him was further away. He took a few deep breaths and then continued towards the shore. He thought only about his legs and his arms pushing the water and about trying to breathe at the right times. Finally, the boy felt rocks scrape his feet, and soon he could touch the bottom. His wet clothes were heavy, but he pulled himself up onto a large black boulder close to the dock. His arms and legs were rubbery, and his teeth chattered. He looked out at the far end of the water and could see a speck that he knew was the Matilda. It was a perfect white thing, again in the distance, right along the line where the sun was sinking. But now he knew it wasn't a toy. His salty clothes dried against his skin, and the boy thought how he'd never join with those older boys from the village who left for America. He knew now why those women cried when they hugged the men goodbye at the dock, and he cried too. Some of those men were friends of his father. Maybe none of them would make it to America now. He didn't know. He watched the Matilda until it slipped past the horizon along with the sun. There was a lot he didn't know.
I'm a little sad because I know that ship sank.
Yeah, that's a true story. So,
Right?
yes.
Jarita Davis, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm like a little misty. It's my Portuguese fisher girl in me.
Yeah, so bad.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. What I heard from that also is listen to your family.
Yeah.
School vacation week. All I'm saying. Moms and dads are out there right now going, yep, absolutely. Listen to that story. That's a good one. Jarita Davis, The Curse of the Matilda. I'm really excited to see more stuff from you.
Thank
And
you.
we'll definitely be watching all this fabulousness right in Falmouth. We're at Naukabout. You can still swing by and grab yourself a beverage. They've got a full list of activities all week long for school vacation week. So if you find yourself losing your mind, bring the kids here, let them run around, have a good time. Robbie is ready for it. I've got some hard tea I'm trying here, and they have the best root beer in town. I'm telling you what. Come on by 13 Lake Ave in Mashpee. We got a full slate of shows for you this week. We're going to be back at the college with some of the students over at Four Cs. Monday, we're going to be talking to Troy, who is a promoter of all things music and art within our community. So that'll be on Monday's show. Tuesday, we've got Hank before he ships off to Florida. Good for you. Just showing me the resort photos. It's the last thing you want to see when you're having everybody else's vacation to live vicariously through them. As you can see, there's snow on the ground here in Mashpee. I'm really excited, and thank you so much for sharing yourself with us.
Thank you for giving me a place to share it. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow on the show. Bye, everyone.